You're watching TVC Breakfast. Let's get into our next discussion now. Now, there are many challenges facing people with disabilities. Many of them suffer discrimination, stigmatization, deprivation, and denial of rights and exclusion. Now, efforts or denial of inclusion. Now, efforts have been made over the years to protect their lives and promote their rights in Nigeria and anywhere in the world. At state levels, one of them is the Lagos State Special People's Bill passed in 2011. But enforcement and compliance of this law is lacking in public and private institutions in the state. This is what we'll be discussing with the Executive Director, Center for Citizens with Disabilities, David Anyele, in the next couple of minutes. David, good morning.
Thank you so much.
It's good to see you, really.
It's my pleasure.
Great. Now, the point that there was a study recently which the Center for Citizens with Disabilities conducted on how states are complying with, the laws for disabilities, especially in Lagos State. Talk to us about this and what your findings were.
This is 10 years. The then governor of Lagos State, Mr. Babatunde Raji Fashola, signed Lagos State Special People's Law. And it was excitement for Lagosians with disabilities, and we are like, yeah, we've gotten there. Recognizing that the passage of that law stems from our failure at the national level, where we struggled for 8 years, and we couldn't get the law passed at the national. So we decided to come to Lagos State.
And start with the state, state level.
State level. So we succeeded between 2007 that bill was presented at Lagos State House of Assembly through our representative, then representative from Koshofe local government, Honorable Adeyeye, who presented it and pursued it until it was signed into law. The signing into law brings a kind of relief to us, because what we found out is that we've gotten an instrument that we can use to demand for inclusion, for participation, for prohibition of discrimination on the grounds of disability. Since 2011 to today, 10 years, that this bill was signed into law, we'll be monitoring compliance, looking at how state is responding to the provisions of the law.
Yeah, the law you're talking about, the Lagos State Special People's Law. Okay.
Lagos, we call it Lagos State Disability Law. We'll be monitoring how they are responding. What we have found out over this period is that there has been effort by the state to implement the law. In particular, the setting up of Lagos State Special People's Law, which is being managed by a person with disability as a general manager, the first person and the second person. We also observed that between 2011 and today, that the disability fund, which the law provide, has also been funded by the state, to the extent that we observed that we saw about 1.5 billion being deposited for this particular fund. And within that period, effort has been made to empower people with disabilities using some fund from that deposit that is meant based on the provisions of this law. However, between 2017 and today, we've monitored or conducted a study on the level of compliance of this law by Lagos State institutions. When we talk about Lagos State institutions, we're looking at ministries, departments that are responsible for the operationalization of this law. We're looking at these ministries. The first one we conducted, we did a kind of an audit of access to ministry, department, and agencies. That was the first study we did. And that study shows that ministry, department, and agencies are still struggling to comply with environmental provisions of that law, recognizing that bulk of the problem that hinder people from participating on equal basis with others is issue of access to environment. We observe that, yes, effort have been made to provide RAM, but that RAM they are providing in different ministries is not up to the standard or the measurement that ought to be. Some of the RAMs that are provided at Alawasa ministries, It's more or less
a secretariat.
In the secretariat, it's more or less a suicide joint for a physically challenged person.
Oh, really?
That is to say, if you go there,
was there a consultation or some kind of involvement in the plan to see? Because if you're saying that it is not of no standard and all of that, what kind of engagement was there before the ramps were put in place?
That is what we expected the ministries to liaise with LASODA, Lagos State Office for Disability Affairs, which the law established, for them to lead them in specifications of what RAM means for different buildings. Depending on the height and siting of a building, that will equally determine the specifications that will be used.
Exactly.
So it's not one size fits all. However, we observe that at LASODA level, the ministry's department agency tends to believe that everything that has to do with disability is just LASODA. Whereas LASODA is just a policy making, guideline generation, advice to the state government, and others, supporting the state in liaising with persons with disabilities, ensuring that state government policy on development is inclusive of people with disabilities. But what we observe is that minimal effort is being made by ministry department agencies to liaise with LASODA in order for them to attain the objective of the ministry, which are people with disabilities.
If we have to simplify all of that into tangible, bits that we can, people can understand, what do you expect to see? What are the tangible things you expect to see in these public places for people with disabilities?
What we expect to see, one, that state institutions must have a policy on disability.
Okay.
The governor himself should have a policy on disability. The challenge we are having is that, the governor is interested in disability issues. He has appointed a special assistant on disability matters based on demand of Organization of People with Disabilities during his dinner with them during the Christmas. They demanded for a special assistant on disability matters, which the governor thereafter appointed. However, the application of charity-based approach in addressing disability issues in Lagos State by the governor will not support the implementation of the Lagos State Special Purpose Law, because the law provides that, take for instance, that there shall be a board of LASODA. As I speak to you, this is 2 years the present government in Alawasa, has come to stay. They are yet to inaugurate the board of LASODA. Not inaugurating this board of LASODA means that the government will struggle to generate a policy that will support them to ensure that Lagos State government program and activities are inclusive of people with disabilities. And this will be a minus to the disability movement and disability community, because the purpose of of getting this law passed is not being achieved optimally, because it's expected that based on the provisions of this law, based on the provision of the law in terms of creation of LASODA, that relationship between Lagos State government and disability issues and disability community will be enhanced.
What kind of engagement and interface has taken place so far after you noticed that the implementation of the laws that were made were not optimal?
So what we've done is that we generated another study to understand between last year or last 2 years and today whether what has changed. And we discovered that minimally nothing has changed. Beyond the Ministry of Education in Lagos State that is working assiduously to ensure that there's inclusive education in Lagos State in line with the provisions of the law. The ministries like Ministry of Health is struggling to implement the Lagos State Special Purpose Law, because the law provides that there shall be free medical care for people with disabilities. And when people with disabilities go to the primary health care institutions or secondary health institutions, they struggle to benefit from the provisions of this law. We are saying that the Ministry of Health, Lagos State, should liaise, collaborate with LASODA to define or generate guidelines for people with disabilities to benefit from this provision. Because without that, it will make the law ineffective. Because
all right, like you said, the governor has done well by taking a step to appoint a special advisor in that regard. how is it performing that role? Is everyone satisfied with the way, because he's supposed to be that interface to remind the governor about some of these things, especially like the study that was carried out and all of that. He's supposed to have, a grasp of all of those things that were raised in that study.
Yeah, part of the things we are doing in order to lead Lagos State institutions on these gaps we discovered around implementation of the law is to organize a summit on Lagos State disability law. The summit is taking place today here in Ikeja. We've invited line ministers, including the governor, including the deputy governor, including the speaker, Lagos State Assembly, deputy speaker, Lagos State Assembly, so that we can bring all these, key stakeholders that are going to play one role or the other in ensuring that this law is operationalized, so that they will be able to understand the gaps, understand the solutions, tinker together to resolve. Because if Lagos State ministries wants to implement this law to the letter, it will involve money. And if it involves money, they will go to the assembly. And if it goes to the assembly will have to give approval. If assembly does not understand the issue, when these issues are being generated for them to approve, they may query or raise unnecessary eyebrow. Disability issues is not a political issue. It's not always something that will lead to procurement, that can attract interest. So in such regard, we need to have a conversation with stakeholders for them to respond, to understand the key issues, to understand their role and responsibility. Because as I speak to you, majority of the ministries in Lagos State, including their agencies and departments, are struggling to understand their role and responsibility. And they're also struggling to understand the relevance of disability in their ministries, departments, and works. Yeah, we can say they're employing people with disabilities in Lagos State. From time to time, people with disabilities are being hired and recruited. But beyond hiring them, beyond recruiting them, those that may not be hired, how are they benefiting from the services? Take, for instance, there is a new transport service that has been generated recently by the governor. That transport services, to what extent are people with disabilities benefiting? Because part of the problem we are having is that the people with disabilities have the impression that they have access to free transport services. However, when they get to the bus stop, they are denied, even some people are denied access, some people are even denied that free transport provisions. So these are some of the issues. So the government need to have a conversation, a policy conversation, not charity conversation, not empowerment conversation. Because where there is no enabling policy, the issue of empowerment, the issue of charity becomes meaningless because it's not sustainable. It is at the whims and caprices of the individual who is promoting it. So we are saying that whatever services, whatever program, whatever engagement state government wants to have in the state, they should equally use disability eye lens to look at it, to ensure that critical issues that concern people with disabilities benefits are integrated in framing, developing, implementing, and even review of such programs. Because
I agree with you, because there are times when some of these policies come up, there is the issue of the gender, trying to balance it. There's the issue of the youth, trying to get them involved. So you're seeing it from that, so that there can be total inclusion. Everyone is on the table, bringing whatever they have, so that we can be more robust. I guess that's what you're trying to say.
Because people with disabilities suffers most when there are challenges, economic challenges, political challenges, and all that. So if we are going to address issue that has to do with poverty, that has to do with inclusion or economic issue, we are saying that start from bottom to top approach. By so doing, you'll be able to understand the feelings, experiences, expectations of people at the grassroots level. So by so doing, it will enhance implementation. It will enhance, clean service delivery to core beneficiaries. But when you are doing programs, you are doing it from top to bottom, there will always be gap. And that gap is simple. An average policymaker interface minimally to vulnerable groups. And they try their best to make sure that they are, worded out.
All right. This study that was carried out by the CCD, how often do you intend to conduct this study? Because after coming up with this study, there were findings and there were recommendations. We'll certainly talk about the recommendations shortly. But how often are we going to have this review so that it keeps this in the front burner?
Yeah, we thank our partners, in particular the Ford Foundation.
Okay.
They've made commitment in ensuring that we monitor through evidence the implementation and respond to critical stakeholders to the provisions of this law. And by so doing, advising the state on the best approach in addressing key issues of concern to people with disabilities. After this, we also, by next 2 months or 3, we're going to start another study on what happened, because this study we are showcasing to them was our findings as at 2020. This is 2020. So this year, in next few months, 3 months, coming up, we're going to begin, to generate our instrument, which we are going to use to also to study again, to know what has changed. As I said, we are having a summit today in which we are going to hear from state institutions, where we showcase some of these findings. We are going to hear from them their own view around some of this data that have been generated.
Yeah. So, but ultimately, what do you expect from today's summit that will be taking place?
What we expect is renewed commitment by the government, understanding of what they should do and how they should do. Create a mutual, relationship, a strengthened relationship by understanding responsibilities between the ministries and LASODA, because LASODA lacks capacity, to be frank with you. So LASODA does not have capacity that is required to address issues that affects over 2 million persons with disabilities in Lagos State.
Capacity in finances or capacity in skill?
Capacity in terms of skill, the technical know-how to addressing issues of disability. I don't know if you understand. So the capacity of staff of LASODA need to be strengthened if they must respond effectively. Take, for instance, I know issues that has to do with, right violation of people with disabilities in the state that comes often. And if they don't have robust, legal system, they won't be able to respond. Lagos State has over 2 million persons with disabilities. I know
that's a huge number.
That's a huge number. Now, in this huge number, what that means is that LASODA should be in a position to monitor everything that other ministries are doing in order for them to respond to them and close wherever gap that will be, that will open within that direction. Even the senior special assistant to the governor on disability matters, her capacity need to be strengthened. Because one thing is for someone to appoint you, for you to do a certain work, and if you don't have what it takes to deliver that work, it will also be, generate another hurdle or barrier, because the governor will be telling you, I have someone who will advise me. He's an expert. He should be able to advise me better. So if such individual does not understand the key issues, by strengthening his or her capacity, we may equally run into difficulties. Because at the end of the day, 4 years will come and go. And when we say, where are we? We can't be able to say, this is what we have, gotten. And if you go back to them, they will be struggling to say, oh, people did not, help me in this area. So part of the thing we are doing as Center for Civil Disabilities is to help the government, is to support the government, is to advise them, using evidence and solutions.
All right. Thank you so much, David Anyele, for coming on the program. We really appreciate what you're doing. Executive Director, Center for Citizens with Disability. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you so much. I'm happy and honored to be here.
Thank you.